Alright, so this is a Pokemon I'm sure that most of you already know about. It was released months ago, and a lot of people seem really excited for this one. It's named Bewear. It's probably the least threatening, fully evolved Pokemon out of every Pokemon from Sun and Moon. It's a normal fighting type, so it's like a really slow Megalopony. And its stats are actually a lot like that of Throws from Gen 5. It has a lot of HP, a lot of attack, but it's so slow. I don't know what it is about this generation, but there are so many slow physical attackers. There's probably more slow physical attackers in Gen 7 than there are in any other single generation. It's kind of crazy. So if some of these sets seem to look similar, it's just because all of these Pokemon have very similar roles. So as far as abilities go, it has three. It has Fluffy, Klutz, and Unnerve. So Fluffy is the new ability that I believe is unique to Bewear's evolution line. And what it does is it halves the damage from any attack that makes contact, but in return, it's weak to fire type attacks. So that is probably going to be the most used ability on it, which is why I think Klutz could actually be useful. Because if you were to run Klutz on Bewear, if you weren't to need an item or if you wanted to run something like Fling, then you could have Klutz and people would assume you were weak to fire, but you would actually be taking technically half damage as opposed to if you had Fluffy. Otherwise, I think you'll almost always see Fluffy as the ability on this Pokemon. One of the sets that I had made out was Choice Banded, because if you Choice Band an Adamant Max Attack, Bewear, Double Edge one-shots almost anything that doesn't resist it. It's so powerful with that 125 base attack. Superpower does the same thing, but there's more resistances. Obviously, there's a ton of fairies coming in this generation. I also gave it Ice Punch and Earthquake just for coverage. There are some other coverage moves it gets. One of the moves it gets that I don't think will be useful is a move called Stomping Tantrum. And how it works is it only works if your last move failed. Then you can use Stomping Tantrum in the next turn. And it's not as powerful as you think it is. Like, it's not a very good move. I don't see it being used. But one thing that caught my eye on this Pokemon was that it actually gets quite a few speed reducing moves. So when you look at its speed, it's only base 60, so it's actually very slow. But if you were to run an Adamant Natured Bewear, you give it Leftovers instead, and you max out its speed instead of its HP, then you can run either Low Sweep, Bulldoze, or Rock Tomb, and you can reduce the speed of anything that might want to switch in on it. When you reduce the speed of any Pokemon that switches in on it, as long as that Pokemon has 100 base speed or less, Bewear will always outspeed it on the next turn. So if that were the case, any Pokemon that switched in on it, say Mega Gardevoir, Jirachi, anything like that, you could set up a Bulk Up in its face potentially, or a Swords Dance, or you could just smack it with a super powerful Double Edge, a super strong superpower, and you could really start dealing some damage. But otherwise, this Pokemon doesn't have the most going for it. There are just so many slow physical attackers this generation, but we'll just have to wait and see how the meta works out, because it looks like it actually may be a slower meta game. One thing I wanted to add at the end was I went back and I looked at Stomping Tantrum, and it's not that it only works if the last move this Pokemon used failed, but it's a base 75 ground move, and the power doubles if its last move fails, but that seems far too situational to use it over something like Earthquake. So I just wanted to make that point and be more specific about its unique moves, so I didn't have any questions to worry about, that way you all would know.